Hello and welcome to the real world. My name's Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit the bell to get notifications of all our videos here at the real world. Today we're going to take a look at Andor. I'm going to review the first 3 episodes of this new Star Wars series streaming right now on Disney+. So the time era of Andor is 5 years BBY. We see this in the first episode. This is 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. That's what BBY stands for. The Battle of Yavin is the battle we see at the end of the original Star Wars film, Episode 4, A New Hope, in which Luke Skywalker destroyed the first Death Star. So that's the Battle of Yavin. That is sort of the linchpin for the entire Star Wars galaxy. So they base everything on that singular event. Just like in our world, how we base everything on BC, before Christ, the Battle of Yavin is sort of that for them. So the opening scene is excellent. It's this rain-soaked planet, lots of lighting, neon, it's dark. It reminded me a lot of Blade Runner. When he goes into this bar, it reminded me a lot of Tron Legacy. Sort of just the way they use the lighting, the kind of dark, eerie mood. That definitely set up the series as this darker, sort of grittier, more grounded feel that we got throughout the rest of these episodes as well. We find out in this very first scene that Cassian has a sister, and we didn't know this. We've only known Cassian in Rogue One as this sort of rebel spy, but in this series we learn that he has a sister he's on the hunt for. Soon after, 2 patrons in the bar track down Cassian, and he ends up killing both of them. This seems to be the first time he's killed anyone, and he is shocked by this, goes on the run. We then get some moments with B2 EMO. This is his droid running through this junkyard. Gave off a lot of WALL-E vibes, which is my favorite Pixar movie, so had a lot of fun with that. And the series introduces a lot of new characters and new planets quite well, but quite quickly, so it doesn't really give you time to catch up. But I didn't mind that. I thought that actually worked quite well towards building the world, and they're not talking down to the audience. There's not a ton of exposition to kind of explain where we are and what we're doing. We kind of just have to pay attention and catch up as we go along. What I liked about this series is that it introduced a lot of new characters, and these characters are just normal people living in the galaxy. These aren't political leaders, these aren't rebel leaders or Imperials, they're not Jedi, they're not Sith, nothing like that. These are just sort of the normal people that are living in the galaxy, sort of the working class of the galaxy. Even our villains aren't actually stormtroopers or Imperial lieutenants or anything. These are just sort of company security guards, essentially. We get a quick look in this first episode at Cassian's backstory. They flash back to him much younger. He looks like he's maybe 12 or 13 years old in these flashbacks. And this is the best stuff we got in the entire first 3 episodes, I thought. His backstory, where he came from, how he grew up, his sister that was mentioned earlier. These kids are sort of living like the Lost Boys in Peter Pan, or like the kids in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, sort of ragtag group of children living out in the woods trying to survive. No adults anywhere in sight. We find out later that there was some sort of mining accident, and that I'm sure will tie in to Cassian's story moving forward. And on that side of things, we got a ton of great visual storytelling. They're speaking a language we don't understand. There's no subtitles either, so that we don't know what they're saying. So it has to all come from the visuals and what the camera is showing us. And that stuff worked so well for me. I was totally engaged whenever they were doing these flashbacks. It was emotional, it was intense. It was unique, a unique setting for the galaxy that we haven't really seen before. So I thought that stuff worked very, very well. Again, my favorite stuff in the whole show. When we go back to the present day storyline, I thought the visual storytelling was a little bit weaker. They relied a little bit more on dialogue to tell the story. The dialogue was well written and it was well acted. I just felt that that part of it didn't work quite as well for me as the flashbacks did. We get this very awkward and obsessed villain character. He's an interesting character. I felt his scenes were a little off, but I think that was intentional. So I'm curious to see what they do with him moving forward. One of the issues I had with this series is it felt like it was a little bit slow, and that very well may be intentional, but I felt that it dragged. So if you're slowly telling a story, that's fine. They have 12 episodes to tell this story. But I think that certain scenes went on just a little too long, and I'm okay with giving things room to breathe, developing characters further, and it seems like that's the goal. But overall, I just felt like some of these episodes, there were certain moments that either lasted a little too long or were just unnecessary. I like a little bit more faster paced storytelling sometimes, especially that's what I'm used to with Star Wars, so I think that's just something I'm going to have to get used to with this new show. It's fairly well shot as well, as I mentioned before, that the camera work is good overall. I feel like there's not a lot of great shots like I am used to seeing in The Mandalorian and in the movies and things like that, even Rogue One. But this show, they're not doing such a great job with that, but they're doing good enough. What is excellent here is the production design. It looks absolutely fantastic. They shot a lot of this on location, and so it has a really big look to it at certain moments. Also, the costumes are great. The makeup, the creatures, the special effects, all of that is so well done. Everyone on this show deserves a round of applause for how well they're doing on that end of things. The technical side is really good. They're also blending the practical and the digital effects, which I think the other shows have done a good job of as well. Both real effects on set and visual effects, computer generated effects being added on to enhance it. The highlight of the first episode is Diego Luna, and going into this, I knew he was going to be great because he was great in Rogue One as this character, Cassian Andor. To me, the most interesting character in Rogue One, the one I wanted to know more about. So I'm super glad that they went with him, and he's our way into this story. He's just a great actor. Every single scene, every nuance on his face, the emotion is there, the way he delivers the dialogue. It's just a great character, and I think he does a great job playing this part. This first episode didn't fully hook me. I mean, it's a Star Wars show. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I'm going to watch the show no matter what. But it didn't hook me the way Mandalorian did, for example, where that first episode I was so excited to watch what was going to happen next. This one didn't quite do that. This is, again, a character we know, so we kind of know his fate already. And they didn't do quite a good enough job of getting me drawn into this story. So I'm glad they dropped 3 episodes and not just 1, because I feel like people wouldn't be nearly as into it if they had just delivered 1 episode, because it didn't quite do enough to get me as intrigued as I wanted to be. So episode 2 is a good episode, but I didn't think it was quite as good as episode 1. I felt that this one was the one where things dragged out a little bit too long. There was some unnecessary character stuff that I just didn't think added anything to the story. I don't really know why it was there. The character Bix and this character Tim have this whole relationship that I just didn't feel added to the story at all. The flashbacks again here was the highlight. So the kids living in the woods see a ship crash and they go to investigate. And this stuff was just excellent. It was so well done, so intense, so exciting, and so much fun to watch this unfold. And that's really what kept me watching, kept me engaged throughout this episode. I really like what this show does, again, with showing off the kind of regular people in the galaxy. And this guy who's ringing the bell tower, Quasimodo, as I call him, he's hammering this bell to kind of wake the town up in the morning. And I just really liked that moment. This character, he has a distinct look and feel about him. So that was just a cool moment that I really liked. And all these random kind of ancillary characters that are kind of on the side that Andor bumps into or we just kind of see pass by on the street, these are the characters that I thought were really interesting and fascinating to watch. So they did a great job just populating this world with really interesting looking creatures, aliens, and characters. So the bad guys weren't as threatening to me, a little bit, again, awkward in kind of their delivery of certain things, so I'm hoping that gets better as the series progresses. This one also had some slightly odd music choices for me, especially at the end of the episode. They kind of are building this intensity, and then it very abruptly ends, and I felt like the music was sort of a like rock music, and that to me was very odd for Star Wars. That's really never been heard before. We're hearing like electric guitars and drum sets, and it just kind of felt a little bit off, like I was watching a Marvel movie or something. It was a little weird. And I don't really hear an iconic Andor theme yet. There's sort of that opening titles thing. It's a very brief little musical thing. Mandalorian has a great theme, so that set the bar very high. I don't know if he's really going to get a theme. I'm not hearing one yet, so maybe he'll get one later. But the music, it's good. It works for most of the scenes. It works quite well. Just certain moments here didn't quite work for me. So this one was my least favorite of the three. Kind of an abrupt ending. It didn't really do a whole lot for me for the characters. Kind of going from point A to point B. Again, episode 1 to episode 3 is kind of the filler in the middle. So it didn't work quite as well for me, wasn't quite as engaging or exciting, aside from the flashback stuff, which I think is excellent. So episode 3 begins, and the only issue I had really here was, again, I'm not feeling the stakes of these bad guys coming after Andor. I know he's going to get away. I'm more worried for the supporting characters, and I wish they had focused on them a little bit more than they did, but they do a pretty good job of, once the bad guys arrive, they kind of get right into the action, and it does build intensity as it goes along. They just don't do a good job of showing us that these bad guys are threatening, that they're scary. They kind of talk about it, and they try to build it in the editing and the music, but they hadn't shown us anything about why these guys are actually scary and why we should be afraid. They're just kind of rude guys, a little uptight kind of mall cops, essentially, so I wasn't that worried about our heroes. The moments when they focus on the supporting characters, like Andor's adoptive mother, Aunt Petunia from Harry Potter, that stuff really worked. I'm just glad they released all 3 of these episodes, because it really felt like one long episode, like almost like a movie, to kick off this series. And so the fact that they gave us these 3 episodes was a really smart choice by the producers. We do get some action here finally, so not a whole lot of action in the first 2 episodes, but in this third one, we do get a great shootout in this sort of, I don't know, was it a chain factory or something, some kind of warehouse with all these chains and these things falling down. That was pretty exciting, really well shot, a great location. And we get a little bit on a speeder as well. I thought that was pretty cool, but nothing huge, nothing great compared to the other Star Wars action scenes we've had in these other series like Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi. They all had great action sequences, and I feel like this one hasn't quite reached that level yet. One of the best moments of the third episode is the parallels between young Cassian and older Cassian at the end. So it's paralleling his moment where he is rescued by his adoptive mother, and the moment when he's leaving this planet to go join the Rebel Alliance. So that was great. I really liked that sequence. The way it was edited together was really good. Stellan Skarsgård, of course, is introduced in this episode as well, and he does a phenomenal job. He's one of the greatest actors working today, and I really like his character. I'm curious to learn more about him and see where we go with him in the future. So the end of this episode is sort of a new start for Cassian. He's leaving his old life behind. He's on the run from the Empire. He's going to find out what the rebellion is and what it's all about. And we know, of course, he will join them, become a spy for the rebellion. And so I'm curious to see where it goes from here. So we haven't gotten into the military spy aspect of the series yet, but it seems like the next few episodes will get us into that more. That's sort of what I wanted, even going back to Rogue One, was sort of a spy series set in the Star Wars world. Rogue One ended up being a little bit more of a war film, sort of like The Dirty Dozen, and I feel like this series has a great opportunity to sort of give us that Jason Bourne vibe, which they have Tony Gilroy, who's writing a lot of these episodes, and he wrote the entire Bourne trilogy, so, and even directed the Bourne Legacy. So I'm really excited to see what ends up happening moving forward. This was a good setup. I don't think it was as great as it should have been and could have been, but I am excited to see where it goes moving forward. It is a little bit more dark, as we mentioned, more violent. There's more language here, things like that I don't really know why they decided they had to go that route. I think that kind of hurts Star Wars a little bit when you make it too grown up. I don't think they needed to push it as far as they did. I don't know why they did, again, to appeal to an older audience. I'm not sure what the thinking is there. Lucas has always said that Star Wars is for 12-year-olds, so Star Wars has always been for families, and I hope it stays that way. I like that they're trying something different. I like the grounded, gritty nature of it. I prefer the more mythic side of Star Wars, where things are a little bit more heightened, and it's about the light and the dark. This kind of is about the more gray area in between, which is interesting. So it definitely has me engaged, has my interest. I'm curious to see where they take it, but it's just not my favorite aspect of the galaxy far, far away. So just another note on the timeline here. Again, we are 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. That's before the events of episode 4. The flashbacks I was trying to figure out, and the Republic is mentioned, so I think this is probably during the Clone Wars era, or perhaps even just before the Clone Wars era, as Cassian is growing up. If you're assuming he's around 30 years of age by the time we get to Rogue One, he looks like he's about 12 or 13. In the flashbacks, that would put us right around that Clone Wars era. So the Republic is still in power. It's right before the birth of the Galactic Empire. So it looks like that's the time that we're going to cover. I'm not sure if they're going to continue with the flashbacks or not. That is, again, to me, the most interesting aspect of the show. How his sister's going to play into it, I'm not sure, but we'll just have to wait and see. So I like how this is a small-scale story, that it looks like it's going to continue to expand as the episodes go on, as he's introduced to more parts of the galaxy, the politics, the wars, everything. Really curious to see what ends up happening in these future episodes. So we're going to get an episode every Wednesday on Disney+. Be sure to check out the next one. Episode 4 is dropping next week. All in all, I think I would give these 3 episodes 3 stars out of 5. I think it's a really solid opening. It's not quite the level of The Mandalorian or these other series that we've had yet, but all the elements are there to make this series one of the best. Be sure you leave your review down in the comments below. Also, be sure to hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications of all our videos here at The Real World, and we'll see you next time.